There we go. Yep. There it is. Well, should we get into it?
Yes, we have.
Welcome. Just the most absolute asinine, needless show possible.
Literally nothing's changed. Just a couple of dum-dums.
Yeah.
Like, I'm excited to sort of dive into this. I don't know what we can say that hasn't already been said, but let's try.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We had a year-long hiatus.
Vacation.
But yeah, like, what did we do? Was it a vacation? Was it a meltdown? I don't know what it was, but we're back. So
I think that should just be like our flow, though. It's like put out like 2 months worth of episodes, year off.
welcome back, everybody, to Table for Deuce, where we shoot the shit about all things lit. I am excited to be here, excited to be back. We are back by unpopular demand. Like, no one is asking for this, but we're here for you, question mark. I don't know. We're here for Clint. Shout out to Clint. Co-founder, co-host, writer extraordinaire, Kate Hanson Foster. Welcome back.
Yeah, that's one thing we forgot was the roasty bios. So I'll just have to go ahead and
It's true.
Introduce you as the ordinary man you are. Here I am with Michael Schmeltzer, author of I did bring props.
Oh, you did.
Surrender.
I did too. See, well, I'm disappearing. Oh, there we go.
I like how you come through, like kind of like you sort of emerged through the cover.
Arcane arts.
Yep, Blood Song. And what I happened to come across on the top shelf is
the collab
with Megan. Right?
That's right. McClure, yeah.
This was the first thing I read of yours. Loved it.
Oh, really? Nice.
So yeah, so that's you. That's Michael, my pal in time this week.
That's right. And for those that don't know, we basically just have a little chit chat, and then we will pick a poem to read and discuss, and then we do our toast or roast. There's been some debate about whether or not we just seek out to hate. There's been some controversy. Is that our aim? And I'd like to address that by saying, I don't know, do you seek to go about life humorless? Is my response to that question. Because honestly, if you cannot take someone discussing a poem for like 30 to 45 minutes and maybe coming to the conclusion that it has a lot of good things, but you don't necessarily feel it's for you, or you don't necessarily connect, I don't think that's hate. I think that is like an opinion. And that's okay. It's okay to have opinions, everybody. I am not going to like everything you like, and you're not going to like everything I like. And that's okay. Some people don't like that poo poem we discussed from Chen Chen, but I love it. And it's okay if you don't like it. I think you're wrong, and I think your opinions are wrong. But that's okay. You can have them.
This is tough because, we obviously want to be very respectful. We're trying to give every poem we talk about the treatment that at least I would want someone to give my work. So, and part of that treatment is honesty. So, and, we could just lie and be boring, but
we could blurb our way through every poem, only pick poems that we both love, and it would become extremely repetitious, and it would just become, I don't know, the lit world. As silly as we behave, we do take every poem very seriously. We do read it with the intention of taking it seriously as art. And every poem that we've read is a piece of art, and we will never deny that. Like, whether we like it or not, this is a piece of art that someone worked very hard on, and we respect that more than we possibly display here. But that being said, it's just poetry, everybody. It's okay. If you want to roast my poetry, feel free. I would probably find it amusing, as long as you're funny. Just be funny. That's all I ask. So it is February. It is Valentine's Day era. It is AWP just wrapped up fairly recently. I don't miss that whatsoever. Been to a couple, and they're a lot of fun. Visiting with friends and seeing journals and presses that you love, but for the most part, I don't miss it. It's crowded and expensive and scary in its own way.
The big scandal, I guess, this year was no tote bags.
No tote bags.
No tote bags.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
they
like
skimped
that's a
on the tote
staple.
bag.
That's what people are paying $500 for.
That's what the ticket buys. Where do you put your tchotchkes that you get from the tables? So when people are giving you like an eraser and a bookmark and stuff, like that's what that was for. It's like trick-or-treating for writers.
They only gave tote bags out to prize winners. So it was only like Jericho Brown. It was the only one that received this year. So it is Valentine's Day, and I know it's very commercial and corny, but I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of something I do for the kids. I do little decorations. So this year I'm a little bit behind in that arena, but it's something that I usually do just as a cute little something. But I do like love poems in the sense that I think they're very difficult to do well. As I guess any poem really is. I guess that's kind of a non-statement, but I do think love poems in particular kind of go into either being just really corny and sentimental, or being, I don't even know. That's basically all I've read lately is corny sentimental love poems. But I think that's one thing I want to explore more in my own work, is how to write love well.
I think that maybe part of it too is that because love, like the concept of love and all of those like general cliches and tropes that come along with it, when people attempt to write a love poem that they want to lean like anthemic in some way, like that it's gonna resonate universally with everyone, desire and longing and that aspect of it. I love reading poems like that, because it is love could be torture, and so if someone does that right, that's always a win for me. But yeah, I mean, you got, and then you have like the poem we're going to talk about today, which I think is a little bit more sexual. So I don't know if we should just get right into it, or
should we? We should. I think we should. I think it's a good little transition to talk about various types of love and hormones and longing and the body. The poem I'm going to read is by Vincent Rendoni from his book, A Grito Contest in the Afterlife. Let's see if I can do this without disappearing. So this is a book I really enjoyed. I know Vincent, he was one of my Jack Straw writers, so I was able to kind of curate a group of writers, and Vincent was one of them. So I was able to work with Vincent quite a bit. And this poem, and I usually don't give away the toast or roast early, so I won't really say anything about it. But at the moment I kind of heard it and read it, it kind of stuck with me. And since it is February, it is Valentine's season, I'd like to read it. This poem is called Sexually Explicit Skywriting. Look up. Forgive me, mi amor, for this. This is how I was taught to love, for all to see. I can feel the blood in your face. I feel it in me too. But before you bring my life to its ignoble end, let me just say this. There are only so many good years left in our bodies. Think of what we're able to do now, the things we can't later. I know, I am so morbid. So let's say yes and shout our intentions for when we are willing, when we can, and say yes. Take all the time you need to think, but not too much. Look up. Nothing is written. There's time. So that was Sexually Explicit Skywriting by Vincent Rendoni from the book A Grito Contest in the Afterlife, which Shout out to Vincent. This book was a prize winner and also sold out of its first printing. So
Wow.
kudos. Yeah. Yeah.
Never
Vincent,
happened.
no, that is a rarity. So I hope he celebrated with a glass of champagne or something, because that is an accomplishment, and well deserved. If you ever have the chance to see Vincent read, he is a consummate performer and reader of his work, and is very, very hard not to root for. Very charismatic, very just a very fun, like, energy around him. So, but anyways, less about the poet, more about the poem. So I would like to just start off by saying the title itself, sexually explicit skywriting, immediately kind of pulled me in, just because it's one of those titles it's impossible to ignore. Like,
Yeah.
you have to read a poem that's called sexually explicit skywriting. Though, is there any sexually explicit skywriting within the poem? No, there is not. Vincent, shame on you. Mischance opportunity.
Yeah, well, I have two thoughts about the title. One is I wonder if it's a 30 Rock reference. There's like an episode of 30 Rock where like Tracy Morgan's wife says like, stop giving me jewelry with like my name misspelled, and no more sexually explicit skywriting or whatever. So that immediately, I mean, it's just so like distinct, you know, like sexually
Yeah.
explicit. But also the other thing it made me think of was like, wasn't there like a pilot who got fired for like doing like a skywriting like a dick in the sky?
Oh my gosh, we are gonna fact check that. Like, let it be so. Okay.
But it'd be such a bold title for sure.
Yeah.
And you know, and like you said, there is no dick pic in the sky in this. Oh.
It is the
And
explicit
honestly, the only
skywriting.
explicit thing is the, you know, the general statement of sexually explicit, but
Mhm.
yeah, but nothing explicit in the poem. So yeah.
Yeah, it is a subtle poem in some ways, which I like. I mean, I I've been leaning towards, like, and I think this is just something that happens after a while, is you kind of get tired of some of the, like, academic tricks and hoops that you need to jump through to get to the meaning of a poem or whatnot. I think it's fun to do as a writer in some ways, but as a reader, it's not as charming to me. But this poem, there is skill without tricks, I guess is the way to phrase it. Like, there's something about the simplicity of language, but it's still saying something meaningful, that I really enjoy about poems. It is very, very much a bold proclamation, and I kind of love the bravado of the poem.
Yeah, it's definitely cheeky. You know, it's funny, my favorite line is really the you know, there are only so many good years left in our bodies. As a 44-year-old woman, sold. Like, you're right. Let's freaking go. It is definitely like, so like time's running out. Pretty soon we're gonna be too old to get down to business. So you know,
Is it a horny carpe diem? Is that what you're saying?
you know, it's a poem of implications, you know, like everything is kind of implied and not said.
Mhm.
You know, and like you said, there's no plain tricks in the poem
Mhm.
itself. You know, no dicks in the poem. I don't know why I keep saying that. Like my first time around on this, I liked this poem. It's funny, like it's silly, I think.
Yeah.
And and just, you know, like you said, the title being like so in your face and kind of sets
Mhm.
up this idea that of something that you think might happen in the poem that doesn't really happen at all.
So I was thinking about the like who the speaker is addressing, and I think, like you said, I don't think it's made explicit as far as who. I've heard Vincent read, so I kind of know the impetus of the poem and that kind of thing. But as far as just looking at the poem itself, the closest kind of indicator that there is some sort of relationship is just the general idea of time and like a future and the present. And this, the mi amor, is, I'm not sure if that's like, is it a play at being overly familiar, or is it just like this kind of exaggerated kind of persona or boldness that appears in the poem? I love what you said, the fact that I didn't mention it, but yeah, there is a lot of humor in this, and like I said, there's that like I said, that kind of silliness, but it's also one thing I will disagree on is I do think there is a little bit of romance in here, and it might be a personal bias, but I love yes. To me is such a romantic word. And the lines, so let's say yes and shout our intentions for when we are willing, when we can, and say yes. I think that is a beautifully romantic line.
I didn't read it that way. I read it as like, now give me your consent, like the way, like, is this okay? Is this okay? Is it, like the way like lovers need
Yeah.
to, constantly, reassure one another
Mhm.
that everything's just fine.
No, totally. And I totally get that reading too. And like I said, it's a little bit of a bias of mine because I have a history of the word yes. I just, like I said, I think I've heard it in a song somewhere where it's used so beautifully. So I always have these connotations of it as being this very like lovely word. So when it's used, I kind of go there.
The speaker here is definitely trying to sell something, like I'm trying, like, right, here we go, like we're not getting any younger, we only have so many good years left, like
Mhm,
running out of time. I don't want to get too like workshoppy on things that I would say that like I
mhm,
would cut or keep and things, but some of
mhm,
the stuff where it drags on about this like take all the time you need but don't take
mhm.
too much time.
Yeah.
And then ending it again with like there's time, like just this fixation on time or lack thereof.
Mhm,
I'm not sure I understood aside from just that these are, we're talking about aging bodies. The hormonal aspect of this, like just that's something that, it's not just, oh, our aging, like exteriors, like our inner
mhm.
chemistry changes as we get older as well. And so,
Yeah.
it just kind of it very lightly touches on these bigger ideas that I think of when I'm reading it. And I don't
Mhm,
know if it's intentional or not. I'm like, this is how I was taught to love. Well, that's
mhm,
interesting, like,
mhm.
okay, dick pic in the sky, but like, why? Why do you feel like you need to do this, big gesture? And it's kind of like
Mhm.
interesting too, like the skywriting and stuff,
Yeah.
historically, get the proposals and, people doing all
Yep.
these like big romantic gestures in the sky.
Mhm.
But and so that's like funny to me because it's not, we're talking about a big white smoky dick in the sky and
Are we talking about that, or are you
yes we
talking
are.
about that, Kate?
Yes
Let's
we
be
are.
honest. I would have really have loved to read this poem in my like teen years, and then in my 20s, and then in my 30s, to see how my reaction to it would change. Because like you said, when I read the line, there are only so many good years left in our bodies. Like you said, I'm 45, so I'm feeling that too. Like these lines, I'm like, yes, they are definitely only like I don't have much time left.
I felt
Like
like
I can
panic.
feel
I was
that.
like, shit, I gotta
The things that I'm going to connect to as a 45-year-old in this poem are probably different than the ones that I would have connected to in my younger years, like the big grand gestures and that kind of a need to express something so big that you feel in a way that's like ridiculous and big externally. That I feel like would have also connected to me at a certain age, and not in the same way now, but I still like understand that. But that combination of needing those big expressions and that kind of the boldness and the kind of not exhibitionist quality, but more the external quality or whatever you want to call it versus the things that you feel internally. Like you said, that kind of mental part of aging, not just the body aging, but the mental and the hormonal and the kind of desire, like what are we going to keep into our 50s and 60s and all that. Like, so I do like the combination of that though. I love the kind of self-awareness that goes into I know I am so morbid. That line is just like kind of takes a step back to understand like the speaker is aware, like, yeah, I'm kind of being ridiculous and I know I do this and like I'm morbid. And I just love kind of like you said, that playfulness that comes with the poem. And I do enjoy poems that are able to do that in a way that make it seem a little bit more human.
There's something flirty, I think, about
Mhm.
it. And playful, like you said, is a perfect word. It's poking at the fact that like the beginning obviously like implies that this is a sexually explicit like what's the word? Proposition. But then once you come around to the end where it's like, nothing's written, like I didn't say
Mhm.
anything. Like, I'm just going to hint at all this stuff, but nothing was
Mhm.
officially said. So like it's all good. It's very
Mhm.
playful in that way, which I did like. And the I know I'm so morbid. I like it didn't the tone dramatically shift for me though. Like it felt out of place, like the exclamation and even like the word morbid, because I don't really see what is being said as being morbid per se. I think it's
Mhm.
just truth. The ugly truth. But
Mhm.
I don't know, there was just sort of like a shift there that I felt like that it was just a little much. But I always find
Mhm.
like when people use exclamations in poetry jarring. I don't know why. It
Yeah.
just it's just like all
I
of a sudden he's screaming at me and I like, okay.
just
So
all caps. Um, but yeah, I can see that point. There is a little bit of a shift. I think at that moment, I do think it's almost like a interjection to the self. Like I the way the form of the poem is, I wouldn't say it's like rambling in a way, but there is that kind of energetic quality to the poem, I think, where there is like this almost stream of things and kind of explanations and declaratives and all these things about it. And so it makes it um a poem of like momentum for me, I think, in
mm,
some ways. And then when you get to the end where it's just all the single lines, it slows up quite a bit for me. I think there's a lot of possibility in this poem
mm,
that is kind of like there's this moment between what is written in the sky and what isn't, whether there's a yes or a no, whether there's a healthy body or a aging body. There's all these kind of that in between space between these things, so it's like full of possibility and full of beginnings and full of endings. And I just think you're in that right in that middle space between like kind of a crossroads where you need to make these kind of decisions or you need to say these things while there's time,
mm,
where it's like there is this speaker and there has to be this like ability to say these things while we can and to do these things while we can. And I think it was an interesting way to say that. That's not the first time I've ever seen that in a poem as far as that idea, but
yeah.
the idea done well or interesting is a different story. And I think this does it in an interesting way, in a playful way that kind of kept me within the poem and always gives me a sense of uh, joy, I guess would be the word too. It's humorous and it's kind of joyful and it's playful and it makes me happy I read it, I guess would be the way to put it. It's never one that I feel like it's not forgettable for me, I guess I should say.
And the form is fitting. I mean, if you think about
Mhm.
skywriting and how it's, the smoke
Mhm.
disperses and there's no permanence there, which
Mhm.
because I think plays along with that visual plays along with what's being proposed. I I think if there was like these kind of winding longer lines, it would feel strange in that way, just because it it the way, like you were saying, those last few lines where it's like, look up, nothing is written. You can almost see the words like kind of flash and fade, flash and fade. It's like with the pause and the, it is definitely a fun poem. I do still have some questions like, why, what does it mean to be taught to love, for all to see? What does that mean? Like, why? And who taught that? And it's so I don't know. That kind of left me a little wondering, and also there is like a power structure in this poem. It's clear like the person that the speaker is referencing is the one that holds the power. Before you bring my life to its ignoble end, and that kind of thing. It's like that is clear, like this person knows like that defeat is kind of inevitable, but I'm just gonna go for it.
Yeah, I think like what you said about the form and the idea of skywriting and things like that, I think that is a good point, because I should mention this is the very last poem in this collection. And
Really?
so poems, yeah. So, and I do think poems, as far as, they should be able to stand on their own, obviously, but also they make sense in a collection as well. And the placement of them is important, depending on who you ask. But I think this is definitely intentionally placed at a certain point, kind of leaves you with a certain feeling. And I think some of the questions that you have would probably be, I have read the book. So, and some of the questions that you might have probably would make more sense in the context of the rest of the poem. It's very much a poem about family, about kind of fantastical narratives of, relatives and things like that. So there's a lot of big personality in this book, I should say, and within the families and the characters in this book. So, all right, should we give it the treatment? Should we go? It is it is time. It is time for the toast or roast. Since it is my pick, I will go first. So, like I said, I like the title right away. It was a title that pulled me in. I like the form. I like the humor and the tone in the poem itself. There are a few lines that really stick out for me. I like the cleverness without it being like a cleverness that keeps people at bay. It is a very warm, kind of inviting poem. It knows its own silliness, but there's a certain kind of like respect and like dignity, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I mean, it's not taking itself seriously, but it's also, the emotions are serious in the way that they're sincere, I think, in a lot of different ways. Like, I think the ideas behind it and the feelings behind it are tackling some bigger issues in a way that I think is accessible and easy to digest. And I've always liked this poem. So it's a little unfair that I picked it knowing that I do like it, but even after the discussion, I still like it. So I'm going to give it a toast for me personally.
Okay. I agree with a lot of what you have said. This was fun. This is a fun poem to kind of get us back to the table, I think. It's different, it's playful, like you said. It's it has this sort of silliness that I can totally relate to. Many people could read this poem and kind of zone into a anecdote or a situation in their lives where this kind of, you found yourself in this situation, and it's just being playful, like, and flirty. Um, in on the subject of love and thinking about kind of like what constitutes a love poem, and the different, the different ways we love as humans. I had to give it the love poem, or at least looking through it with the love poem glasses. So when I put my love poem glasses on,
Yeah.
I'm looking for things like, despite, how much the concept of love is cliche, and we lean on so many of these very basic tropes when it comes to writing about love. But for something to be a good love poem to me, like I want the desire, not to say that desire is not here, but I want like passion.
Mhm.
I want to feel the torture. I want to feel like just, all of that longing and thrill of love. And I feel like
Mhm.
there's just a little bit too much not said um
Mhm.
in this poem that, and despite, I think, if I don't know how to say this without just saying that, if in general I
Mhm.
toast the poem, I like this poem a lot. I love the line,
Mhm.
like, the obviously there's only so many good years left
Mhm.
in our body. Such a great line, such a true line.
Yeah.
But I think on the subject of love and our theme of talking about love poems, I'm gonna have to roast this one because I just don't feel like it lives up to, or at least not what I would pull out of the hat in the future to be
Mhm.
like, oh my God, you got to read this love poem.
This one is one of those that I think kind of subverts, or not subverts per se, but is like, is it a love poem? Is it not? Like, where does that kind of fall in place? And I think I would say, like, if you're looking at it from that lens, it's a little bit more like there's like the humor and the playfulness in the body that kind of takes center stage a little bit. So I can see that angle as far as if you're looking at traditional love poems or things that you would think of as romantic love, it's not quite in the same category. But I do love this poem for its ability to like kind of complicate and fuzzy up that aspect of love to make it like it's equal parts like kind of a funny poem, and it's equal parts a poem about like aging and mortality, and it's equal parts about kind of lust and love and all that stuff. So I think it, for me, I would definitely talk about this poem in that sense, as far as this is a poem that you can like dissect and is it a love poem, and is it a successful love poem, and what makes it so and what doesn't make it so, like we had today. So I think it was a great poem to discuss, so I'm so excited about it.
I definitely want to know if the title came from 30 Rock, but so maybe you'll have to ask if you don't mind.
I'm gonna text him
Yes.
immediately.
We just really need confirmation in order for me to properly toast or roast your poem. Is that line from 30 Rock? I know I've mentioned this to you before.
Mhm.
That there was like when Donald Hall had those essays that he wrote, like when he was in his 80s, he put out that book of essays
Mhm.
that just talks about aging and stuff like that. But I think it was in one of his interviews. I can't remember if it was one of his essays or if he said it in an interview that like he didn't even bother writing poetry anymore because he just didn't have the testosterone for it. And that was like so interesting and also true and kind of sad that like, that really we are just products of our own hormones. It's so basic. And when we think about
Yeah.
like how we draft up these poems to express those
Mhm.
basic hormones, I mean, it is kind of silly.
It really is. It's so I don't know. Like there's I don't know why I'm gonna bring this up, but my cat lately has been dragging around a stuffed animal and humping it. And I'm like, yeah, that's basically what we do. That's humanity in a nutshell. We're just dragging shit around, trying to hump it.
Literally, that's what most of the poems are like today. They're just poor stuffed animals that that
Just kidding.
poet hump treatment.
This was fun, and we're getting our sea legs back, as they say. If you have any comments, want to email us, we are at table4deuce@gmail.com. Feel free. If you want to recommend yourself as someone that comes on the show, recommend someone else for the show, recommend a poem, recommend that we quit. Whatever you want to say, feel free to email it, and maybe we'll read it. Maybe we'll roast it. Who knows? It could be a joy. It could be your claim to fame to be roasted by us, because we're good at it.
Yeah, next time we'll maybe even have a guest. So
We will have a guest. Fingers crossed.
all
All
right.
right.
Well,
Take care.
it's been fun. Till next
Bye. We were saying such smart things.
just going right in for it, like with the dick pic in the sky. I just got like the whole time, just a smoky, erect penis in the sky. Right, the whole time reading. No dick pics.
We're gonna have a dick counter on this episode. Just every time, like a little bell will go off.
Dry humping editors, dry humping journals.